right, so you guys have sent in a bunch of articles about Ubisoft. And let me tell you, things are getting kind of spicy over there.
Yeah.
We're talking like serious investor drama, accusations of mismanagement, even like the fate of huge franchises like Assassin's Creed kind of hanging in the balance here. Get ready to deep dive into why this all matters, because it's honestly about way more than just numbers. This is about the future of the games we love to play.
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head there. What we're seeing right now with Ubisoft, with like the stock prices plummeting and those really scathing investor letters, it's really a symptom of this like larger struggle that's happening across the gaming industry right now.
Okay, so break it down for me. And for everyone listening who maybe isn't a finance guru, what is the stock market downturn? Like, what does that actually mean for a company like Ubisoft?
So, in the simplest terms, it means less money, less flexibility, and a whole lot of pressure. Imagine like having to pitch your next big game idea, but the people who are holding the purse strings are like really worried about the last game's performance. Suddenly, taking risks on innovative new titles becomes a much harder sell.
In Ubisoft, with its history of like these massive open world and super ambitious narratives, those big swings are kind of their thing, right?
Yeah, for sure. Exactly. When recent releases like Star Wars Outlaws don't meet expectations, it kind of sends these shockwaves through the whole system. Investors get nervous. And when investors get nervous, they start demanding answers.
Which brings us to that investor letter, right? The one from AJ Investments and Partners. I gotta say, reading that thing felt less like a business communication and more like a breakup email, kind of with lots of, we need to talk, and I'm just not feeling it anymore.
Yeah, it's true. The language in that letter was surprisingly strong. Words like deep dissatisfaction and concerns about management were just like thrown around. It's clear these investors aren't just a little bit concerned. They're ready to shake things up.
And the thing is, it's not even just about the games that haven't lived up to expectations. They even call out Ubisoft's upcoming titles like The Crew, Motorfest, and Avatar.
Yeah.
Frontiers of Pandora, games that I know a lot of gamers are really hyped for.
Right. That's actually what makes this situation so fascinating and honestly a bit worrying. This isn't just about a couple of games that didn't quite hit the mark. This is about the entire direction Ubisoft is heading in and whether investors believe they have the right team and the right strategy to compete in what is a really rapidly changing gaming landscape.
Okay, so let's like really unpack this investor letter a bit, because it feels like they're not just saying, hey, Ubisoft, your games aren't doing so hot. They're practically saying you're playing the wrong game entirely.
Yeah. That's a really good way to put it. It's like they're looking at Ubisoft with all this potential, right? All these iconic franchises. They have these talented developers. And they're saying, you're squandering it. You're chasing all the wrong trends instead of focusing on what made you great in the first place.
So what are they saying Ubisoft should be focusing on? The letter mentions mismanagement and undervaluation, but I don't know, those just feel like such loaded terms.
Right. Let's break those down a bit. So when investors are looking at a gaming company, they're not just looking at the latest sales figures for a game. They're looking at the long-term strategy, the vision for the future.
Which, in the case of Ubisoft, it's been a bit all over the place, hasn't it? I mean, they've dipped their toes into everything from mobile gaming to NFTs with, I don't know, kind of mixed results.
Exactly. And this investor letter really seems to suggest that this kind of scattershot approach, this like trying to be everything to everyone, has really diluted Ubisoft's focus and ultimately its value.
Okay, so they're saying that Ubisoft is undervalued because they're not playing to their strengths. So what are those strengths?
Well, remember what originally put Ubisoft on the map? Games like Assassin's Creed 2, Far Cry 3, these massive, immersive, story-driven experiences that really kind of redefined what open-world gaming could be. That's the Ubisoft DNA. And this investor letter is arguing that they've strayed way too far from that.
Instead, they're pointing to decisions like delaying these huge titles like Rainbow Six Siege and The Division, focusing on these live service models that, to be honest, haven't really taken off.
Yeah.
And I think it's fair to say putting out a few too many games that just feel kind of uninspired.
Right. And now, to be fair, the live service model, where games are constantly being updated with new content and microtransactions, it's incredibly lucrative if you do it right. But this investor letter is really suggesting that Ubisoft, instead of innovating in that space, is kind of just trying to copy the success of other companies.
And that lack of a clear, unique vision, that's what's making these investors so nervous.
Exactly. This investor letter is painting this picture of a company that's chasing trends instead of setting them. A company that's more focused on short-term gains than long-term sustainability.
And, remember that upcoming Assassin's Creed game? the one set in feudal Japan that we talked about.
Mhm.
This whole investor pressure cooker situation. I mean, it's got to be adding another layer of stress to that entire development cycle.
Oh, absolutely. You have to wonder, what kind of impact is this investor pressure having on the creative process at Ubisoft? Are the developers being encouraged to take risks and really innovate, or are they feeling the pressure to play it safe, to just churn out something that will hopefully appease the shareholders,
Yeah.
but maybe it won't really push the boundaries of gaming as a whole?
Yeah, and that's where it gets really interesting for us as gamers, right? Because this isn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet. This is about the future of some of our favorite gaming franchises. So we've got this backdrop of like investor unrest and accusations of mismanagement, this feeling that maybe Ubisoft's lost its way a little bit. I mean, what happens next? What are the potential outcomes here?
Well, one possibility is that Ubisoft goes private. So imagine a world where they just buy back their own stock, essentially saying thanks, but no thanks to all those disgruntled investors.
So no more quarterly earnings calls, no more pressure from Wall Street, just like pure, unadulterated creative freedom. That almost sounds too good to be true.
Right. Well, there's always a trade-off. Going private means they'd be answering to a lot fewer people, for sure. But it also means less access to capital, less funding for those like really big, ambitious projects that Ubisoft has become known for.
Yeah, that's a really good point that I hadn't really considered. These huge, sprawling open worlds, the cinematic cutscenes. I mean, those don't come cheap. It makes you wonder if going private would force Ubisoft to like scale back their ambitions a bit, maybe focus on smaller, more experimental titles.
Yeah, it's definitely a possibility. Another scenario, and this one's maybe even more intriguing, is acquisition. Another company might come in smelling an opportunity, swoop in with a huge stack of cash, and just buy Ubisoft outright.
Okay, so now we're getting into like real Game of Thrones territory here.
Okay.
So who do you see as the most likely contenders in this corporate takeover battle royale?
Well, you've got your obvious players, right? Microsoft, Sony, Tencent. These companies with super deep pockets and a vested interest in expanding their gaming empires. But then you've also got some wildcard possibilities. Amazon, Netflix. Maybe even a company like Apple looking to make a bigger splash in the gaming world.
And each of those potential buyers would obviously bring their own vision, their own priorities to Ubisoft. It really makes you wonder, what would an Assassin's Creed game even look like with like Microsoft's influence? Would it be even more integrated with like the whole Xbox ecosystem?
Yeah.
Would we see Master Chief riding shotgun with Ezio Auditore?
Okay, that's a crossover I never knew I needed. But you're totally right. An acquisition could fundamentally change the DNA of these franchises that we love. Imagine like a Sony-owned Ubisoft, focusing more on those narrative-driven single-player experiences, or like an Amazon-owned Ubisoft, leveraging their cloud technology to create these even more massive and persistent online worlds.
It's honestly a lot to process. And we haven't even talked about the possibility of a management shakeup. What if Yves Guillemot, the CEO who's been leading Ubisoft for decades, is forced to step down?
Yeah, that's the big question mark, isn't it? Would a new CEO signal like a fresh start or return to Ubisoft's roots? Or would it just lead to even more uncertainty, more delays, more of the same issues that led to this whole mess in the first place?
It's kind of mind-blowing to think that this whole drama, this battle over stock prices and corporate strategy, could have this ripple effect that impacts not just the games we play, but the entire way those games are made in the future.
And I think that's the biggest takeaway from all of this. The gaming industry is changing, it's evolving, and not always in ways that benefit us, the players. It's more important than ever to stay informed, to understand the forces that are shaping the games we love, and to make our voices heard.
Absolutely. Because at the end of the day, the future of gaming isn't decided in boardrooms or on trading floors. It's decided by us, the players. So keep asking questions and keep fighting for the games you believe in.
Well said. Well, on that note, I'm gonna go pre-order that feudal Japan Assassin's Creed game before they decide to turn it into a mobile battle royale.
I hear you. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. It's been a wild ride. And everyone listening, thanks for sending your questions. Keep them coming, because you never know what we'll uncover next.